Hello there, everybody. This is George, the Antique Nomad, and we're bringing you another episode. I love going cross-country and showing you all sorts of fun, interesting, and strange things that we find in the antique and vintage world. We do sometimes film these on Periscope. You'll see the link to the unedited versions below. This particular episode was filmed on Periscope, and sometimes the signal quality is not always what we hope for. So you will notice in this one, it looks good on a small format or a mobile device. It was filmed at 480. Maybe a little grainy if you're looking on a larger device, but we hope you'll still share, like, and follow us, and that you'll enjoy this episode. Good morning, viewers. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. I'm George at the Antique Nomad on Periscope, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'm here this morning at the Kennewick Swap Meet in Kennewick, Washington. This is a giant swap meet they have every year, and it's always in September. I haven't done this show before, but I had a bunch of stuff to sell, and I am going to take a look around and let's see what they have to sell in the rest of this place, because it looks pretty interesting. Okay, so we're just going to kind of take a random walk, folks. I haven't been through this one before, so we're going to just go through and see what we find. This is in the Tri-Cities in eastern Washington, and there are probably 100 or more dealers here, and people have been coming in since last night setting up. It opens in about 30 minutes, and it looks to me like there is a big mix of everything here. I see everything from antique and vintage, like this 50s cart here. There's a really cool trunk next to it. Looks like a lot of shoe lasts and fittings, things that people repurpose into other stuff. And then we're going to see a lot of rust and iron at this show, I have a feeling here. You see the old deck chairs in the background there. This is not strictly an antique show, although there are a lot of interesting antique things. I'm going to walk over towards one right now. This car over here is actually a 51 Chevy Deluxe, but this one has been modified and has raced at Bonneville and holds several records in its class, so I thought I'd show you that. Now these folks over here have collectibles, so we're going to take a look at some of the things they've got, and let's see here. They've got a big selection, it looks like, of the jewel tea pieces here. Some people call this Osco Drug because that was the company that sold it, as well as the Jewel Tea Company in the Midwest. And nice selection there. Different serving pieces, a lot of stuff that we don't see all that often. This section in here has a bunch of old interesting beer advertising here. I see Burgermeister from New York, and Rainier and Pearl Beer from Texas. And then we also see that this meet's going to have a lot of toys and lunchboxes and related things, we think, because it does seem like the kind of place this stuff shows up. So, oh hey, look, there you go. If you were around in the 70s, I did not know there was a Grizzly Adams trash can, but there he is, Dan Haggerty in full beard, back the last time that was popular. Now everyone's growing him again. Here's Pee Wee and Cherry. I sold one of these last year for about $60. They're pretty collectible now. And then Michael Jackson, any of those 80s icons definitely coming back. And speaking of which, there's one now. Let's see, over here then, oh, we've got one of these interesting lamps, and this one's a little different because usually you see these with the oil dripping down. This one's got a house inside. Usually it's some sort of a semi-clad lady, so that was a little different for us. And let's take a look over here. This is a general swap meet, so you can bring anything and everything, and people do. I see everything here from housewares and signs and cast iron to people selling cars and car parts. But there are antique and vintage things in here too, and we do expect a good crowd for those today. A couple of old suitcases there. Local access sign. Got some interesting beer trays. Interesting to me because I see something that you don't run into too often on our coast, and that is Stoney's beer out of Pennsylvania. So that's kind of an interesting piece that I have not seen before. Bunch of cast iron, including in here. I go around where you can see this 4-in-1 with the great star top. That's an interesting piece. A little different. Legos. Boy, people are really into Legos now. And if you're trying to match up an old set, this is one good way to do it, is find a dealer who's found a bunch of stuff and put it together so that you know what you're looking at. Got some toys in a case here. Curious George pop-up Jack-in-the-Box, kind of a different thing. And then let's see, we'll walk out of here. There's just so much here. And since I haven't been through before, we're kind of finding out about it together. So let's see what else is interesting down the row here. On the right-hand side looks like a lot of car parts and spotlights and things. And on the left-hand side looks like a real general bunch of stuff. But one thing I'll point out here are all these old oscilloscopes and other machinery from the 60s and 70s. There are a lot of people interested in this sort of thing now. Some are buying it to use, some are buying it to take parts and fix other things they have, and some of them are actually taking them apart and making other things out of them. So you've got three different groups of people interested in them. But a lot of people who understand these old scientific instruments are buying them because some of them do things. If you want to fix old technology, you've got to have the old technology that was used to fix it, or you won't be able to do much with it. So that's an interesting thing with this dealer. I'm going to move this direction because I'm going to show you some stuff that's a little more antique and collectible over here that I see. We've got a dealer over here with some Guardian ware. We see Guardian ware always has these interesting tops, either in metal or glass with the Trojan on them. So that's something kind of different. And then these folks have a couple of good-looking little lightweight mid-century chairs there. Might have to come back for those. I like those. And Crocs, like we've talked about. We've got bread box up here, nice set. We've got some cameras, nice piece of Fenton carnival glass. I'll zero in on here so you can see that a little better. There we go, that's a nice piece in the red there, $24, good price on that. And some other 50s and 60s glassware here. Let's head back into the back here. We'll pick up so that you can see. This is quite a large flea market, actually. There's about 100 or 120 dealers here. And they have got a variety of stuff for sure. This one particularly has a lot more in the antiques and collectible realm, which is what I look for. So let's take a look down some of these aisles. Some good looking tins here. Swift's lard. Calumet with the chieftain in the headdress, always popular. Bunch of character glasses here. This gal, I believe, has an antique store somewhere in the area. So we're going to see everything from telephones here to old milkshake machines over here. And a couple of other pieces. The Hamilton Beach machine there on the right in the green is a popular one. Got an old sled. We're seeing those coming out because we're getting closer to winter. It's hard to believe that in the middle of summer, but summer's almost gone. And then here we've got a bunch of tire ashtrays. These are pretty cool. General Tire out of Walla Walla. Co-op Agri-Power, Enterprise, Oregon. These are pretty collectible. They've been making them since the 30s, and they are definitely something that people enjoy for advertising and also just because they're kind of cool looking. They've got a lot of toys here, some vintage as well. An old salad maker here with a good graphic on the box. These things still work. I sell them to people and they take them home and use them, and they slice, they chop, they shred, they grate. Okay, let's see here. Got a bunch of kitchenware over here and the drip top syrup dispensers out of the 50s, lots of those. Okay, so across the aisle here, this fellow's got something interesting. I'm curious to see what this is. Next to the table with the big anvils. Anvils are very popular right now. A lot of people getting back into blacksmithing, metal trades, and other such things. I have never seen this number 400. What in the world is that?
That's a Champion 400 forge blower.
A forge blower, okay. That makes sense.
Big companies, Champion, Kennedy Auto. Two big ones making the blowers.
That is really cool, actually. What would have been used in some sort of a blacksmith shop, or?
Yeah, it connects to the forge and blows the air into the forge.
I see. Okay, and then it comes out there, and you've got the spinner. That is really cool looking. Thank you. Hello. Always fun to see something that we haven't seen before, and that was a new one on me. I have had a few anvils in the past, but you don't see a lot of blacksmithing items these days, so that was kind of neat. I've noticed that furniture is very inexpensive here again. This 1910s dresser, $75. So if you're looking for something solid and actually made to last, that's going to be an option for you. In here, we have a whole bunch of different glass. We have Goofus glass with the airbrushing on the outside from about 1910. And some nice little face stems there. Those are a good deal. A little bit of Fostoria, a little bit of Blue Bubble, and then up here, these are kind of fun. These are all from about 1940. These are Disney figurines by American Pottery, and you've got Thumper, you've got, of course, Dumbo. You have Thumper's girlfriend, and that is actually what she was called. She never had a name in the movie, but these are really cute pieces, and they're priced really well. They're all priced about $15. It's about half of what a lot of them go for. So good price if you get out to the swap meet. If you beat me to it, I might come back and get those. These folks have a wide variety of stuff again, and some old, some new, and some in between. Again, a lot of collector plates and vintage glass. The sky blue pieces on the back shelf there are a Katy blue cream and sugar you don't see very often. And let's see here, we're going to keep on heading this way and see what's in the back 40 here. Okay, I promised you rust and iron, so here is some of that. Lots of pieces. We've got blocks and valves, we've got old boat motors. Boat motors are pretty collectible, actually. People like to restore those. And even this kiva here, or whatever you would call this stove, a lot of people are interested in these types of things these days because they're using them for different purposes. For example, this old car radiator surround from the 1920s. I have seen these turned into mirrors. I've seen them turned into covers for secret hiding places for money. I've seen them turned into pieces for the fronts of bars. So a lot of these things that you look at and you say, who would buy that rusty piece of junk? Well, you know what? Somebody has an idea to turn it into something other than a rusty piece of junk. So these days, this is very popular. Big old oiler here from an old service station. This space has some pretty cool stuff, it looks like. Again, another front end of a car back there. We've got oil cans. We've got the snowshoes. There's a hood from a Volkswagen. There's something you could repurpose in an interesting way. Skis, including the old wooden ones. People like wooden skis. A lot of people hang them up in lodges these days, we find. So that's something different. And another boat motor. It's interesting how you walk through and you'll see different versions of the same thing in an era. There's the top of an old scale. That's something really cool. And some old advertising. Going to come around the back here. And again, we're at a swap meet, so that means we're going to see almost anything here. Could be stuff that was made last week, could be stuff that was made 200 years ago. This dealer has a nice Formica green set in there. See the green chairs? Those are really cool right out of the 50s. And it's actually a nice price for them. You'd have to do a little recovering, but the table is good. And what a great color. Nowadays, finding these is not so easy. It used to be every house had one, but most of them are in collections now. Also over here, I see they've got an interesting sort of teak modernist version of an old roll-top desk, and that's a nice size. So it'll be fun to see if people come out of here with furniture. And we have a box of chalkware hiding down here from the 1950s, and that seems like a great deal. $5. I think I'll be back for that. And this is something that those of us in the business can always use, a profit builder. And that's kind of a cool old sign. This dealer seems to have a lot of beer advertising. Let's get the camera up where you can see it. We've got PBR, Old Pepsi, Lowenbrow, and then back here I notice he's got a couple of the old Rainier Wildlife. We're going to turn slowly here, give you a look at those. These are pretty neat. This was a guy named Tom Loket who did these in the 1980s for Rainier, and Rainier stuff's really collectible around here. And he's got an old Milwaukee and some other cool stuff. Let's see here. I thought this was kind of neat. Somebody's auto club turned an old steering wheel into a clock for them. I thought that was pretty clever. Lots of old bottles, lots of kind of random stuff, and a lot of car related emblems, signage, spotlights, all that good stuff. So if you're redoing a car, there's probably a piece of your car sitting here waiting for you. I noticed he's got a bunch of license plates for $1 each. People are turning those into all sorts of things, wall plaques and clocks, and welding them together and turning them into all sorts of interesting art. Okay, I'm going to try to go over everyone's heads here. And let's see, we've got lots of vintage denim out here. And there are definitely collectors. We actually get a lot of people on this coast who come over from Japan and China and actually look for pieces that are worn in a way that they think is interesting, and then they'll take them and use them as patterns to make new pieces, which I find rather odd. I have lovely worn jeans with lots of holes in them, and no one ever offered me a bunch of money to design. These are really cool out of the 50s. It's nice to see the dancing figures both there. Generally, by this point, one or the other of them are broken, so this is a pretty good thing. And again, folks, I'm going to flip the camera real quickly and just see you all again. I am George the Antique Nomad, at the Antique Nomad on Periscope, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we are here at the Kennewick Giant Swap Meet in Kennewick, Washington, in the Tri-Cities, and we're just getting close to opening, so I'm just trying to give you a little preview of the types of things you might find out here. Let me flip around and we'll go a little further. Okay, we're getting closer to the end of the line back here. I'm way up in front, and I'll show you my stuff hopefully in another scope, maybe tomorrow, but I can't uncover because then I can't show you anything. Here's some neat stuff here. The old phone is a good color in the green. The Alice Chalmers, this would have been Ertl back when they still made things in the USA, and that's what the collectors look for now. And here's an interesting thing. The Texas Longhorns, 1954, Galveston, Texas. This is restaurant wear, and this would have actually been done as some sort of a commemorative for an event and then given away. So that's an unusual piece of cafe wear. We don't really see commemorative pieces much because they were mainly made for restaurants to use over and over for years. Here's a Francoma picture in the rutile prairie green color. I have a bunch of Francoma in my booth as well. It was made in Oklahoma from the 1930s until about 20 years ago, and it was really known for that two-toning in the glazes, especially in the greens and browns. Very Western looking, very popular with collectors now. Got some advertising, and there's that talkative dog for us. Cool old barbershop sign. A lot of tins. Always seem to be interested in tins. It doesn't matter what they are or what age. The older the better, of course. Here's a railroad lantern. We see these kind of lanterns on the left a lot. They're more utility lanterns, but the railroad lanterns were shorter and squatter because they had to fit in a tight space. They almost always have the railroad's initials on them. This one is CPR, which is Canadian Pacific. And at $50, it's a pretty good buy. That seems to be about what they run these days. There are ones for just about every railroad line across North America and probably in most foreign countries, although the foreign ones look different. Cool old no smoking sign with the phosphorescence. This phosphorescent paint was something you see a lot around 1950. You know, think we're just discovering the power of nuclear stuff, and so anything that glows is interesting. This is an old Washington license plate from 1916. They usually are just like this with surface rust, and you can't really see any color in them, but people just love finding them because back when they were first made, which that would have been about the first year, Nobody was thinking, oh gee, we're going to keep these because 100 years from now people will think they're interesting. They just threw them away the next year. Here is a neat old air horn with a great logo on it, a great medallion from the Persons Majestic Manufacturing Company of Worcester, Massachusetts. I'll bet this thing is as loud as can be. More license plates here. You'll see more of the old Washington style. In Washington State and some other states, if you can find a license plate that is the year of your classic car, you may register it once and never have to register it again. So it's a great savings. So a lot of people look for the old plates to try to match to a car that they have so that they can take advantage of that. And then there's a lot of old pulleys. It's funny, in a previous haul video, I showed you a Saab oil concentrate can that I bought, and it was a little one, and there's the bigger size. I'd never seen one in 30 years, and now in 2 weeks I've seen two. Kind of a funny thing. I didn't even know we had a lot of Saabs in Washington. In the back of the fair here, we're getting near the end. We've got some people under the trees. You'd think it's fall already, even though it's still technically summertime. But the leaves are falling, and it's a good time for people to start picking out stuff to enjoy and play with over the winter time. People are buying furniture for going back inside, and they're buying objects and things to repurpose, things for projects, and just things in general, because it's fun. This dealer, I see the old Scout handbook back there. One of my favorite things about the Scout handbook from that era is that in the first aid section, they recommend if you're bleeding from the head to tie a tourniquet around the victim's neck to stop the bleeding. Pretty much stops everything, so that was effective, I'm sure. Bunch of old railroad locks in here. That'll be fun for someone to go through. A lot of them will actually have initials of the railroad they were used with, if that was their function. We've got some old globes back here that are kind of neat. Nice old mantle clock I see here. That's a handsome piece. And you know, only $20. Clocks are very inexpensive now, so good thing to be looking for if you think they're interesting. This is a great time to be buying. Look at this set of weights. This is interesting because they go up to such a high number compared to usual. These are out of the agriculture department in Virginia from about the 1920s. And it looks like most of them are there. They might be missing a few small ones. These big ones you don't really see often, though. I would have gone with one of the big scales for some sort of assessment. I'm not sure what. Then over here we've got some cool wooden water skis, and I'm going to put the camera down and let some people walk around so that they don't have to be on it. So let me turn slowly here. Here's a neat piece over here that you don't see very often. This is the Pepsi-Cola Christmas cutout. Again, 1950s piece. We think of Santa as advertising Coke, but Santa's pretty equal opportunity apparently. And so this one, he was advertising Pepsi. It's got the single dot between Pepsi and Cola, so we know that that's sometime in between the 50s and the 60s. They used to have a double dot, but they got rid of that at some point in the 50s. One other thing I want to show, just because it's really neat over here, and then I'm going to have to go get my booth open. We've got this really cool cannon clock here with the bullets and everything. That is just a fun piece out of the 50s. I haven't really seen too many of these around in my years of doing this, so we might have to come back and take a look at that too. We are just about to open here at the Kennewick Giant Swap Meet, so if you are anywhere in the Tri-Cities area or Eastern Oregon or Central Washington, come on down. We're here today from 9 till 6 and tomorrow from, 8 till 6 and tomorrow from 9 till 4. And until then, it was great having you with us. I'm George at the Antique Nomad on Periscope, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And bye for now.